There are certain foods that can pose a danger to our brain's health, foods which may accelerate the decline of our memory, the onset of conditions like dementia, Alzheimer's, or even cerebral strokes. For example, we were never informed that coffee has the potential to induce a significant loss of memory due to insufficient sleep, nervous system disruption, or even certain foods that end up destroying our neurons simply by consuming them every single day. Sugar and bread are among these kinds of foods, but there are some you're consuming every single day that could be causing you mental sluggishness, brain fog, and no one has ever told you about it. Nowadays, everyone worries about a good liver, kidney, and colon cleanse, and in the end, we forget the organ that commands all our internal bodily health. Our brain is the one that carries out all nervous functions, the one that gives commands to the liver, to the kidneys, so they can perform a good bodily cleanse, so we can function, breathe, defecate, cleanse, everything the body needs to do without us thinking about it, without us activating it. Our brain is constantly present, working to ensure that the proper functioning of our entire body is truly maintained. However, there's a significant problem. We often feed our brain with certain foods that, instead of helping it function correctly, completely damage it. It is then that we begin to experience issues like nervousness, sleep problems, and poor digestion. Many times because there is not a clear signal from our brain to all the commands in our body and organism, diseases, metabolic problems, and hormonal imbalances appear. And many times we don't realize that it's the food that is poisoning our brain function, causing everything to fall apart. Number one, sugar is causing you poor neural function. Our brain functions based on sugar. Nutrition obviously comes from everything that we eat, but at its most fundamental level, it uses glucose to be able to use it as a primary energy source. Many times, with the excessive consumption of sugar, which is processed, packaged, and canned, we see that our brain suffers to be able to survive. Some individuals who consume a lot of sugar are the first to then notice their brain no longer reacts. It becomes stunned. It gets overwhelmed by excessive oxidative stress. And over time, interestingly enough, studies have already confirmed that those people who suffer from insulin resistance due to a high intake of sugar, breads, and carbohydrates are the first to experience that the brain gets overloaded and many times can no longer function. That's often when we experience that feeling of mental fogginess or being dazed that we tend to feel when we don't get enough physical exercise, when we don't burn off the excess sugar that is built up in our system. And over time, that gradually begins to poison us. Memory, dementia, Alzheimer's are beginning to show. If you need a quality supplement that can improve the functioning of your brain to reverse this entire situation that has been caused by sugar and poor nutrition, look for Bird Brain, Neuroflex, and Neuromatrix from Fineline at finelinevitamins.com. Number two, consuming too much coffee is completely destructive. Coffee is an energizing beverage, a drink that will activate your neuronal functioning. Our neurons must operate at a certain pace to avoid becoming overloaded. Just as an electrical grid can be overloaded in a house, a building, our brain also needs a certain tranquility to be able to react. It has its own impulses, it has its own command, it even has the rhythm at which it must operate to maintain order in its internal functioning. Every time we consume caffeine, energy drinks, artificial sweeteners, or any foods that significantly alter our nervous system's function, we accelerate it, we stress it, and the brain gradually gets damaged, wears out, and becomes filled with oxidative stress. Not to mention, caffeine can alter and heighten our anxiety. It can keep us from sleeping at night. It can keep us overly alert. And logically, that neural fatigue shows as tiredness, confusion, or stress, or excessive alteration, also aggression that we can see in certain individuals who don't have good mental health. If coffee is causing you anxiety, if coffee is keeping you awake more than you need to be, if coffee is a drink that's affecting your mood, making you agitated and aggressive more than necessary, that coffee is poisoning your neurons and destroying your brain. Number 3, bread, and especially refined carbohydrates. If there's one food I could call a total poison for the brain, it's bread in all its forms. In the past, bread had no problems and didn't place any burden on the body's health. Today, we don't know if the wheat we're eating is genetically modified or if they're adding an ingredient that might be poisoning us internally. What we do know, and what has been seen repeatedly in new studies that have come to light, is that the bread consumption we're having is affecting our brain health. In fact, many medical universities and doctors or medical students are stopping eating bread before taking an exam. Before taking an exam to be clear-minded, to have the brain ready and be able to think. Because that dazed feeling, the lack of mental clarity and the lack of lucidity is very much connected to the abusive consumption of carbohydrates, of breads or of sugar that we often tend to overindulge in. My personal recommendation is that if you still don't know if bread is causing you harm, you should perform a test. Stop consuming wheat for 1 or 2 months, hoping that you'll see a change. And if after you consume it again, you realize you feel groggy, sluggish, and with a lack of mental clarity, that wheat you're consuming has become another poison for the brain, which should be functioning properly. If you are in need of a natural supplement for your brain's health that is designed to help reverse, improve, or prevent a severe memory condition such as Alzheimer's or dementia, then search for Bird Brain, Neuroflex, Neuromatrix, and Apelysor from Finland at finlandvitamins.com. Number 4, processed meats. Not the good meat that we used to eat. Processed meats, that is to say, everything that comes in sausage, canned, or jarred, is one of the worst foods we can consume for our brain health. Let's not forget that this type of food is loaded with salts, minerals, metals, including aluminum, fats, and other ingredients that will ultimately damage the circulation to our brain. Our brain can become filled with fat, potentially blocking an artery, which then leads to a stroke. And what is more, as has always been observed time and time again, all that comes filled with fat and heavy metals ends up being stored in the brain, causing much damage over time and with the daily intake that you might have. This obviously without even considering high blood pressure, poor circulation, which the brain depends on, and without which it won't receive oxygen, blood, or proper nutrition to develop, thus leading to problems like dementia, Alzheimer's, and worsening your overall situation. Number 5, alcohol is just as detrimental as full-fat dairy products. Everything that we consume in our daily lives today, whether it's alcohol, dairy, or any beverages that come in cans or bottles, they are very often highly processed. They're no longer the natural drinks we used to consume. And with milk, for example, when it's produced, when we drink it, it comes from ultra farms or with the excessive use of certain hormones, certain antibiotics, certain medications that then pass into the cow's milk you're drinking daily for breakfast. That comes along with oxytocin and hormones, which help produce other sex hormones to throw off hormonal balance, and which often leads to men with enlarged breasts, women who develop certain masculine characteristics, and sometimes a hormonal dysfunction that we can never diagnose because we don't know where it comes from. Avoid alcohol, avoid dairy products, avoid foods that harm you, because in the end they become a poison for the brain that controls absolutely everything. Everything in the body. A like to the video. Much love. Until next time. Big hug to everyone.